Welcome to Dungeon Master School, the series where we explain all the essential topics for running a game of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's right. Whether you're a brand new dungeon master or you're continuing your education, we're here to help you learn how to get the most out of your games. And Josh, today we're talking about preparing a session of Dungeons and Dragons, or really any tabletop role-playing game. The 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide actually has a section on it. We may or may not put a link in the comments on D&D Beyond, but there's a phrase that I like to think about my prep, and that's when I prepare something, I want to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's kind of a bit of a goal, but if you're watching this video and you only take one thing away from this entire synopsis, or whatever we're going to call this, if you don't know what your players are going to do in the next session, you need to ask them. And it's perfectly reasonable to do that, because that is going to focus your prep exactly where it needs to be.
It would feel crappy as the person running the game to start a session or to start a hangout by saying, hey, actually, I'm not able to do this thing. But the same way that there's a responsibility on the DM or game master to have a game ready, there's a responsibility, or there should be a responsibility on the players to be on board and to be good players. Like if you send a message and say, hey, I'm thinking we're going to be in this place, is there anything that you're interested in doing? And nobody responds, prep what you got to prep. And if they want to do something different, it's either, hey, we can do that, but it's going to take me half an hour or however much time to get it ready, or I don't have that prepared. I'm sorry. You told me you wanted to do this thing.
Play Parcheesi.
We can do that. Or maybe we could play Monopoly, Parcheesi, Risk, whatever. It's just being respectful of each other and of everyone's time. But yeah, when it comes to prepping a session, I think Jake said it best. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Another way to say that is expecting the unexpected. Change is the only constant. The only thing I can expect is that my players are going to throw me for a loop sometimes, so I will prepare for what I can prepare for, and also just expect that they're always going to do something that you just can't prep for. So then how do you focus your prep? You focus it on what you can control, and then just kind of let the other cards lie where they lie. We'll talk a little bit more about that so that makes sense. But before we get into that, how much prep is too much prep?
For me, I mean, if your notes start to look like I'm a web developer, so like if it starts to look like some of the code behind, or like some crazy JavaScript that I wrote where it's like if then, it's like, all right, am I playing a video game or am I playing a tabletop role-playing game with a human being sitting around a table? That's when it's like, you might have overstepped here. You might be just doing more than you need to worry about, because that's when you start preparing like 17 different things and the group is only going to pick one. Again, that goes back to asking them, like, what are you guys going to try and do? That's going to help eliminate all of that.
And if you prep 17 if-thens, they're probably going to do if-then number 18.
Yes.
That's just what happens.
Yes. You can't account for it, because there's probably not a lot of just one-on-one games out there. They exist, but in all likelihood, you're going to be outnumbered. And even the smartest people, they say two heads are better than one. Well, how about 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on your table? But you never should try to. Our friend Lee actually had a pretty good video on this, which we definitely will have a link to in the pinned comment. And I would encourage you to watch that after this. But what does it look like when you haven't prepared enough, Josh?
In my experience, at least, it always leads to, maybe not always, it usually leads to like a yes man kind of silly situation, because you have no real direction. You just have like some very, very loose ideas. Maybe you didn't have time to prep and you decided to just do it anyway. Somebody's asking you something that you should have had ready and you just didn't have time, but you don't want to say no, you don't want to disappoint. So instead you're just making things up on the spot. And I would advise against it, because it's hard to have a cohesive story. It's hard to be true to that if you're just kind of doing things as they go, and just making up your lore, making up your NPC goals and motivations and all of those things, giving players information on the fly that you are not ready to give, because you're either saying this is what it is and it doesn't make sense, or you're going to retcon it in the future, and either way is not great. At the end of the day, you got to figure out what works best for you. The first time I DM'd, I had been really into whichever version of RPG Maker was around 10 years ago. So I did have a lot of if thens, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. And I especially wouldn't recommend doing that continually. But I will say, for me, it did help me kind of frame the one shot and just get an idea of where things might go. Just having a couple ideas, not 17. 17 is too much
Yes.
prep.
If it looks like computer code, you've taken it too far. But having some is very good.
So you will have to figure out what works best for you. I feel like there's levels of prep. Specifically, probably 2 levels of prep. Like there should be in all things. Like there's 2 J's, 2 levels of prep.
I like where you're going with this.
Like and I think it's things that you need to be very familiar with, and things that you should have more of like a passing and a lighter familiarity with. Does that make sense, Jake?
Absolutely. So we're going to be getting into preparing the environment that you're going into. So what kinds of things should you be looking for? You should be very familiar with main NPCs, maybe mechanics that might be involved. If you played Baldur's Gate 3, you should know how the Shadow Cursed lands work. If there's a specific trap involved, that sort of a thing. Like maybe if it's a sci-fi game, like, oh, I should know this is an anti-gravity environment. So, I should just have that. I should be very familiar with how that's going to affect the game. If there's a planned encounter, that's a big one, especially if it's like a boss fight, like, or if you watch one of our playthroughs. And usually I feel like, Josh, you've had some pretty humdinger cliffhangers where we get to the boss and we're like ready to go, and we're like, all right, you're like, roll for initiative, cool, see you next time. I'm like, dang it. But if the next session you walked into that session, you're like, oh, I didn't even look at the boss numbers and the statistics, or the stat block, all that kind of stuff, that would really fall short if you didn't do that.
My falling short in a session like that is making everyone roll initiative, and then being like, we're going to use that initiative next session. And then I'm like, oh God, where did I write it down? I don't have the initiative written down.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like Michael's very good at that.
Yes. Yeah, he is good at keeping me honest. But yeah, no, I think that's a perfect example of things that you need to be very familiar with. The Death House we just ran through recently. If you're going to take a group through the Death House, you should be familiar with that dungeon map. You should have looked through it. You should have an idea of where some of the traps are and how they work. And look, your group's probably not going to get through the entire dungeon in one shot. So maybe you don't have to know the final section of it, immediately. You don't have to know how to escape or anything like that right off the bat. The very least, be really familiar with the monsters in the first section, any secrets, how to unlock those secrets, the kind of checks that you might want to ask people to roll so that they could learn information about it. Because people are going to ask those questions. Hey, I see this symbol on a banner. Would I know anything about that? It doesn't take a genius to say, like, my players are going to ask about this,
Exactly.
So you should have something ready for them, as an answer.
Those are the kinds of things you're probably going to read through it multiple times, or at least until you've got it down and you know exactly where it is to find it, if you need the information or something specific comes up. But the next level would be passingly familiar, and to me, this is your minor NPCs. This might be shops. This might be like random encounter tables. Maybe you put together a list of 8 encounters and you just kind of know how that's going to go, but you're not even sure it's going to come up. So you're not going to focus too much time there, but you've at least read through it once, you've prepped it, and you do know where to find that information if it arises. And I think that is probably the biggest distinction, I would say. Just know where to find it. And it's okay to say, you know what, that's a good question. Maybe you take a 5-minute break, but Just give me a moment. I'll find it for you.
Yeah, it's. I have nothing to add. I just agree.
But now to really kind of like the meat and potatoes then of this, and that's environmental prep. If you took the first thing we said and you know where your players are going, you know they're going to be in this city. Great. If you know what they're going to do in that city, better. Now you can specifically work on knowing those factions, the main players, the main story lines that are happening, the current events and stuff like that. And knowing the goals of all of those factions and people involved helps you handle anything that's unexpected. If I know that the only thing this faction or NPC is looking for is gold, you don't have to wonder what your players will do. I know the headspace of this faction. I know the headspace of this, guild leader or whoever they're talking to.
That doesn't mean that you need to know every single person who works or has ever worked with this faction. You don't need to have like a Godfather family tree of this is the Don, this is the consigliere, this is the whoever but yeah, know a couple people, know what the faction wants, and you should be able to pivot however you need to from there. Another thing you should do when you're prepping is kind of taking a step back and thinking about the story as a whole, the larger story. You should use goals in your prep and when you're setting up your sessions. Worth saying too, it's okay for the DM to have goals too. Players need to have goals, but DMs need to have them too, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. A lot of, at least the first way we talk about this, there's going to be someone that's listening and it's going to go, "This is the quantum ogre. This is the illusion of choice. You're just looking for where you can." It's like, no. The major difference between the illusion of choice or the quantum ogre, if you will, like whatever door or pathway they take, they're going to fight this ogre. We call these goals because you don't always achieve your goals, and there are certain criteria in which that's just you're just leaving yourself open for saying yes to the things that you kind of need to say yes to. What do I mean by that? A short-term goal, maybe between the next few sessions, 1 to 3 sessions, whatever it is. Maybe you have a goal of the party needs to learn a specific piece of information. That could be a rumor. That could be maybe a piece of knowledge that they have to research. Whatever you have in mind, you just have an idea of who might know this information or where they could get this information. And if the group comes
Yes.
up with something that makes sense to you, you're like, I didn't even think of that, but that fits a goal I have. Heck yeah, I'm saying yes to that, and it's even better because the group like earned it their way. But you're just looking for opportunities to share that information with your group. But the opportunities have to fit the story and make sense.
This is the perfect tie-in for what you're just saying too, with having multiple pathways to information or to a goal doesn't mean that you have 3 doors that are forcing everyone to the same pathway. It doesn't mean that you're on a railroad that's going to the same station. What you're actually doing is protecting your players from missing out on something important. Zach the Bold had a short that I watched the other day. Probably the only D&D creator that I consistently watch aside from Lee at this crits, where it was just making fun of hiding key quest informations behind like skill checks. And it was like everybody's rolling the d20 and they're getting 3s and 1s and 2s, and it's like, all right, well, you guys didn't learn you failed your insight check, so you didn't know that the king was doing X, Y, and Z. So I need you all to make new characters. We're gonna do a different campaign. It's like, what? If you're looking for rumors, you can have them. You can have players try to persuade someone into telling them something. You could also have them overhear it.
Yep.
Whatever you want. There are multiple ways.
Yeah.
For players to learn information without you forcing it on them or forcing them to do it a specific way.
And the biggest difference is they earn it. It's not just they're learning it no matter what. It's, are they going, is it military information? Are they hanging out with soldiers or where soldiers might hang out? Like it's they have to earn it. That's the biggest distinction.
And it is okay if they miss things. Like I
Yes.
can give you
Yes.
I've there are multiple times where I've hinted at the same thing 3 different ways and the players have not picked up on it, and it's just like, okay, you guys missed that.
And that's it.
That's
And that's
okay.
fine. And that's fine and even good. It actually makes it when they earn it more special. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If it's a smart player you're playing with, like Jake or Michael or Nooch or Lee. And they have that aha moment of, wait a second, I remember we overheard this and it didn't mean anything to me at this time, or like this person had this tattoo and I thought it was just flavor, and it, whatever. It's you can hint at things, and it's either going to help players achieve a goal, or it's going to be a really cool aha moment down the road.
Yeah, and like you said to start this section, talking about like taking a step back and looking at the larger story, there are longer term goals as well, right? Maybe the BBEG is collecting spell components to do some kind of like awful ritual that's gonna like blot out the sun. That was a WebDM uh, plot or something along those lines, with like where the sun got blocked
Yeah.
out or something along with, yeah. So
Yeah.
but if the group is constantly finding these just odd but specific things, like that all of a sudden starts to form goals for them. Like, why, how do all these things tie in together? Or, maybe one of the player characters wants to find a parent. I've been watching Chuck lately. From I never saw it back then, so like that, a big whole thing is like his search for figuring out what happened to his parents. That's a long-term goal. Like that's a good example of like, and he's got to find these clues. How do they all add up? Like, why did they do X, Y, or Z? Was it to protect me, or are they good? Are they bad? Like, what's going on? These are the kinds of things where you just give little nibbles, but you're just taking a step back. Is there an opportunity to drop a clue here? Maybe they find it, maybe they don't. It's fine, because there'll be other clues they could find later on or pick up on. But I think it's just good to know where the story is moving in a general sense, and
Yeah.
you're going to be able to find opportunities to do things like, oh, maybe they stopped at this bar and they put the familial resemblance together. Who knows? But it's just an eye on the future too.
We're talking about goals, we're talking about thinking about the story as a whole, but when you back this up into environments, NPCs who live in that environment, or organizations who live in that environment, like, why is it important that we think about the story as a whole before we head into this session in a specific area with specific people? Because if I know that there's someone from the Golden Rose, which is an organization that Jake's long lost cousin was involved in, and Jake has some sort of, like, he wants to know what happened to his cousin, maybe the fact that this person works for the Golden Rose isn't the most important thing to next session. But if you drop the little hint of a tattoo, of any sort of markers that, like, oh, wait a second, this person's affiliated with this organization, there's your little piece of information. Jake might notice that, he might not notice that, but if he notices that, he's going to want to ask questions and find out about this long-term goal. And that's why it's important to think about the long-term goal, because I don't want to put myself in a situation where, looking back at that session, it's going to be so obvious. If I don't think about that ahead of time, and suddenly, oh my God, of course Jake is asking about this. It's someone from the Golden Rose. This is something, this is one of his, this has been on his character sheet for 6 levels. Like, of course he's going to ask this question. And now I'm forced to be in a position of not giving any information, just passing on it, which I guess the same as not giving any information, or making something up, and you're either going to get lucky and you're making something up and it works, or you're running into the problem of the not enough prep, where it's silly or there's continuity issues. Yeah, exactly.
And let's just as a quick note, like, everybody knows that we're human beings and we make mistakes. So like, if you have to use the retcon, or you have to say like, you know what, I'm going to get back to you on that because I feel like it's important and I don't want to mess it up, that's really not the end of the world. We're just talking about, what does complete prep look like? And when it is solid and you give that experience to your players, there is such a magic. Like you feel like I feel a sense like I well with pride when I like the world comes alive to my group and they connect these dots. Like there's something special. It's like magical at the table when this happens. So as with everything, talk it out, good communication. That's what we talked about in our session 0, setting expectations. All of these topics kind of link and kind of have that same communication base. So really, we're all looking to have a good time and have some fun, even in our actual plays. Uh, yeah, this is important. I should have remembered that. Like it happens, but it's really cool when you get it right.
Prep is going to look a lot different for everyone, but if you're thinking about all these topics, you're not going too crazy being a computer with the if thens. If you are thinking about the important NPCs and organizations, if you know the specific environments and things that might happen in those environments, and if you're caring about the short term and long term goals, you're going to do just fine. And if you have to pivot, which you will, you'll be okay. It's a learned skill. So just get your feet wet, make it happen. What I would like to know is there a specific thing that you do to prep? For me, I love to have a cup of coffee. Just helps get my creative juices flowing. So if you have some sort of ritual for your prep, for DM sessions or for any sessions, let us know in the comments. And we'll see you next class for DM school. You can see our past episodes up on the screen. We got 2 of them right there, I think. Probably. There should be 2 of them. Anyway, drop a like and subscribe if you like this. We'll see you on the next one.